that.
My faith in destiny is all I need to prevail.
This is the Truth Frequency Radio Network.
You are listening to the 100th Monkey Radio with Tom and Ramon, raising the consciousness of the planet one monkey at a time.
Kings and queens and royal gents and popes and priests and presidents.
Welcome to the 100th Monkey Radio. Oh boy, guys, what a week. I mean, there is so much stuff going on out there in the world. You're listening to Tom and Ramon here on the Truth Frequency Radio Network. And we're going to kind of break this show up just a little bit tonight. We're going to chat a little bit about the date that is coming up, the 21st, before we bring in our guest, which we've talked with quite a bit, and both Ramon and I have learned quite a bit from this guy. We're going to have Specner Barclay on with us here. We're going to start him in about 30 minutes, but he's going to share a lot of his wisdom that he's picked up through the miles and miles of road that he has traveled and the ins and outs of the financial structures that have been set up on this planet. And we're going to see if we can't make some heads or tails out of the kind of things that we can do coming up in our future. So how you doing, Ramon?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been a little bit of a wild week because, I was going through some personal stuff with some a friend of mine's back home passing away, and then listening about this, and then the one in China, which no one is talking about. I just want to speak briefly that, I feel like they're not addressing the real issue as always. And the real issue is not the gun control so much, because in China there is no guns. They also have knife control, and yet someone went and did the same thing and, injured a bunch of young children. And the real problem is the mental health, the way we address mental health in this planet, not just in America or in Japan, but in this planet, because this kind of stuff happens all over the world, and our own government does things like this, and no one talks about that. No, so
yeah. Well, we got a lot of shit going on right now, and there's a lot of stuff coming out about that shooting there in Connecticut that really should, us out here in the woo-woo world really should be paying attention to this, because there's a lot of things that are just not adding up with the whole thing. I mean, you take a look at the guy that did the Aurora shootings. I don't even remember the guy's name, but his father, was set to testify for that, oh shit, I'm drawing a blank. What's that called, Ramon? Help me here. I forget what it was called. The LIBOR. Thank you, Spencer. The LIBOR scandal. And the kid that just shot up all those kids in Connecticut, his dad was set to testify in the same thing. It kind of makes me think, okay, well, if you guys are going to testify, we might take your family down. We might make you a big bad guy in the community or something. I don't know. There's something there that's just not quite adding up in my book that makes me really think that, I don't know. Anyways, I've got a totally different twist on this stuff, and we're getting ready to go to our first little break here. And when we come back, I think I'll share something that came to me through Inside, a way to take some of this shadow boxing that's out there and turn it to our advantage. Listen to Tom and Ramon on the Truth Frequency Radio Network. We'll see you guys after the break.
Had my hands.
Get up and don't be shy. Excuse yourself and pick up the call. Pick up the call. You gotta pick up the call. Pick up the
call. Ain't no monkey
Oh,
like
welcome back to the 100th Monkey on the Truth Frequency Radio Network. Just let you guys that may be hanging around on the phone lines know we're probably not going to take any calls in this next segment here. So, and we're probably looking at the second hour before we're taking any calls, guys. And I talked all over myself there. Boy, I'm going to have to learn how to do this professional radio thing here before, I don't know. Anyways, man, you know, I was sitting at lunch today at work, and I had all this stuff running through my mind, all this crap that's going on, all these big traumatic things that are happening in our society right now. And something came to me about all the energy that's being put out and how to utilize that energy, how to do something with it. Because if we just leave that energy go its own course, then I have a feeling that, you know, if something doesn't interfere with that energy stream, something doesn't direct that energy stream in some other way, then we may just get exactly what it's being projected as. So it came to me that when one of these shadows pop out in the world, one of these big traumatic things that are trying to create and generate fear in us and it escalate it and to you know, just to put us all in that fear state and oh, I don't want to go outside, you know, I don't want to do this, oh, I'm going to hide, you know, run, where's my gun, get the anger and the fear going, you know, when that energy's out there. What came to me is I saw it so clearly too, is if you can look at that energy and you can see it for what it is, and as far as being something that's just thrown out there to generate fear, then what you can do is you just take that energy and you redirect it, because you're using truth. You understand that this is out there to generate the fear, to continue this escalation of the panic of 2012. Oh my God, the world's going to end. They're killing kids here and people being blown up there. And oh, geez, what are we going to do? So you can take that. I call it shadow boxing. You can take that shadow boxing that's going out there and you can throw your truth to it. You know when it's truth, because that stuff resonates from your very core. And you refocus it. You just use that same energy. You reach out and grab onto that stuff and you take it and you refocus it into something productive. Look at the future. Look at what tomorrow holds for us. Focus on things like, oh, how about free energy? How about food on everybody's table? How about a roof over everybody's head? Refocus that stuff. There's a tremendous amount of that fear energy out there, and it's all out there for us to use. If we can grab onto it, twist that fear around and turn it into something else. I don't know. I saw it so clearly, and I'm really not giving it the justice it deserves from the vision that I had. But this is something I see and know. I know this in my core that we can do. So, anyways, what do you think about what's going on, Ramon?
I agree with you, which is rare. No, but no, I agree. There's definitely, and that's not to take anything away from these young children that pass both here in the U.S. and the ones in China or anywhere else, because like I said before, this is happening all over the world. And you know, the truth of the matter is our society is lacking something very big, and what is that, you may ask? And that's, for me personally, that's for lack of a better label, spiritualism, the inner work. Because if I'm almost sure that if there was some kind of like, let's just say a monk or somebody very, very aware of meditation would be working with some of these mental cases, I'm almost sure that things would have turned out different. But no, instead we load them with drugs, and as soon as they miss that one day, they flip out. And I've seen people flip out when they miss their medication and things like that. And some people say, well, they need to be on that medication, but there is no end to it. It just keeps going and going and going. And as soon as they miss it, they're actually worse than they were before. So is it helping them, really?
Yeah, there's an awesome movie out there called Garden State. And I just watched it here recently. And it's this guy that, the story's based around this guy that's been on the meds his whole life, the ADD stuff, all those psychological drugs, I don't even know the names of the damn things, the Abilify or Xanax or fuck with your mind trophy shit, that stuff, he's the guy who's been on this his whole life, and he finally he kind of throws it all to the wind. He goes back to his hometown and leaves all his drugs at his apartment. And it completely unfolds and opens up into a completely different person. So, I'm not saying, put your drugs away or whatever. If you some people need them, they need them. But, there's alternatives out there to that stuff, especially it just tears me up when I see or hear about somebody. Got a guy at work that, I think they put his kid on, what's that?
Ritalin?
Yeah. I'm like, and I just cringe, and I'm like, oh no, come on. Yeah, so.
Yeah, but what would you know, Tom? Because you're not a doctor. That's exactly what they would say to us.
Well, exactly. Our society, we're trained from day one, to trust the doctor. Everything the doctor tells you is supposed to be the God's honest truth.
Let me interrupt you really quickly, because that reminds me, we will be having on our website next week, I think next week or in the next 2 weeks, Dr. Gibson. And, he was a trained psychologist, and he was saying the same exact thing. He was like, I'm just putting these people on drugs, and I don't see anything getting better. And one of his clients had died because of the drugs didn't mix right. And he turned into a healer because he just couldn't go down that path any longer. And he was going down that path for 10 years. So I just found that amazing, because it's exactly what we're talking about now.
Yeah. They send them to school for 8 years or 10 years or whatever it takes to get an MD now. And then, all they do is sit around and write prescriptions. And get to go on vacations because the pharmaceutical companies are giving them kickbacks because they wrote their quota. I don't.
Yeah.
The whole medical industry has got some serious work that has.
Tony Kudo makes a good point, and he was saying that more kids die in car accidents hit by drunk drivers or but we're not banning cars.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was like, it had to have been just minutes after that shit was released that people were calling for gun bans. Take your guns away. We don't need guns.
Problem, reaction, solution.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how you control a population.
Yeah. Every time anybody says anything about banning guns to me, I just tell them, okay, do the research. Just look at one country. Just one country. Look at Switzerland. Just look at Switzerland. That's all I tell them. I mean, And it's just absolutely amazing what they've done over there since World War II or before World War II. It's like, they don't have gun crime. And the population is armed.
Yeah, and look at Canada. I mean, most of the gun crimes committed is by Americans.
So, actually, right here in the U.S., you don't hear about the stories of the old lady that was in the McDonald's or wherever the hell it was when some guy comes in and he was going to shoot the place up. He had 1,000 rounds on him and a couple of weapons, and she fucking shot him. I mean, you don't hear that story where or
the Portland too.
Yeah, I mean,
you know about the one in Portland, right?
No.
What? There was a shooting last week in a mall, and this guy who had a license to carry a gun, he shot him. And so he nipped that right in the butt. He got to kill some people, but at least it was taken out. And
we have these gun-free zones. Schools are a gun-free zone, right? They have. They're actually starting to see signs posted around places that this is a gun-free zone. If I'm going to go out and if I have a gun in my pocket and I have some wild hair up my ass that I want to go out and shoot up a whole bunch of people, I'm telling you what, I'm going to go to a gun-free zone because I don't think that there's anybody there that's going to be able to stop me. If I go to a place where there may be guns, I'm definitely going to think twice about it. I don't know.
Yeah.
We got a lot of issues here in the United States, in the world.
In the world.
Guns and there's some agendas that are being played out right now. Things just really sound fishy. There's, I talked about in that first little segment there, I talked about the fathers of the two shooters from Aurora and from Connecticut about their fathers supposedly were going to be testifying in that LIBOR scandal thing. Well, that's still questionable too, because I haven't really done all the legwork there and done the research myself. So I'm just going on secondhand knowledge there. So don't anybody take me for, take this as gospel or do the Tom said thing, because all Tom's saying is this is what I heard, and something still something really sounds fishy with the whole thing.
Yeah.
How did these guys carry in? Was it 5 propane tank bombs? Is that what it was?
I'm not sure which one you're talking about.
Oh, no, hang on. Am I talking about Columbine? I'm talking about Columbine. Never mind.
Mixing up stories here.
My head's just been going round and round and round thinking about this stuff all day today that, there are some really serious cards being played on the world stage. And I just want everybody to really, take a serious look at this stuff. And that vision I had this morning, it was so crystal clear that we can take that energy that they're putting out and we can use it. And I won't say against them, because it's not against anything and it's not against anyone. It's for us. We can use that energy for us to make something better for us. And so, I mean, it's not an us and them or because they're all humans too. They're all spiritual beings having this physical experience also. But I know. That's what the point I really, really want to get across to everybody is that we can take this and use it to our advantage, and we can definitely come out of this smelling like roses. And I still am very optimistic about the whole 21st thing.
Yeah, now that you mention roses, that reminds me, because all this shit they're feeding us, we can use that as what do you call it, Tom? When you take fertilizer to bring out the roses that you were talking about. So
yeah. So Ramon, do you think anything big is going to happen on the 21st? Just your personal, your opinion. What's your gut feeling tell you?
I'm trying to feel into my gut. I don't feel anything that the average person is going to notice is going to happen. But I think a lot of those people who are in tune, because, for me, 12, since then I've been feeling more energies, and I feel like I'm a little more sensitive to it. And I feel that the people who are more in tune to these energies are going to feel more. And I also think the people's personal psychic is going to pick up more, become a little more psychic. And for me personally, I feel like it would be easier when you sit down to meditate to really get into it.
Right.
But we'll see what happens. But that's something, on a personal that you won't be able to prove, and only, each person can say whether that's true or not.
Yeah. Well, my gut feeling is my gut is telling me that there is something that's going to happen, but it's not going to be. There's no. I think it's going to be the result of all the energy that's being put out and surrounding this state, and all the focus that everybody has on this state, and all the different meditations that are going to be happening. I think there's going to be some phenomenal things that happen, and it may be just in local areas and on personal basis. I think that's probably the more significant events are going to be personal. And I'm just a freaking energy hound. I don't know. It's getting thick. The energy is the flow that's out there right now is it's palatable. I mean, I feel it when I can just feel it, and it's growing and it's getting thicker. And I have a feeling it's like it's building for a release, and I think that release is going to be very profound for a lot of people.
You want to hear something weird? I want to go like a little deep into the woo, but right when my alarm clock was ringing, I heard your voice, Tom, and you were talking to me. You were like, "Oh, good piece of work that you wrote," and I was like, half asleep in my mind. I was like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "Oops, it's too early," and then you went away, and I was like, "What the?" So I brought that up just because I feel that our connections between, your wife or your friends or even strangers, I feel like that's also growing in the telepathic thing. And I'm sure people who listen to our shows heard me talk about this plenty of times. And even with your plants and animals. So that's all growing.
Okay, well, we're coming up on a break here, Ramon, and after the break, we're going to bring Specner Barclay in, and we're going to talk a little bit about the history of money and some of the different things that he's learned through his voyage on this planet. And I don't know, we'll see if there's something we can do with that. 100th Monkey Radio on the Truth Frequency Radio Network. We'll see you after the break.
.us.
Now I don't care about what you heard while the rumors are flying. Don't believe a word.
Are you the 100th monkey? Will your awareness be the one that tips the scales? You're listening to the 100th Monkey Radio with Tom and Ramon on the Truth Frequency Radio Network.
Already know this, you know where I've been. Best thing, baby, that could ever be having you love me.
You gotta love Perry Mills Project. That's the bumper music there. So we have Spencer. Spencer has spent several years independently studying law, contract, linguistics, definitions, Orthography, commercial redemption, administrative process mortgages, foreclosures, and many other threads in this immense rabbit hole of info regarding sovereignty. He has come to his own conclusions about the nature of conflict, how to resolve it, and achieve remedy on being sovereign on every level, not just our actions, but our perceptions as well. And that's a very important one. In October 2011, Spencer visited East Eddy Ranch and gave a 3-hour presentation and a Q&A session regarding similar subject matter. We have links to the video of these presentations on our website. You guys pop on over to the 100thmonkeyradio.com, and in the main menu, you'll see Nature of Money series with Spencer, and we've done a few shows with him there, and there's a ton of different links and dictionaries and all sorts of stuff there that you can refer to. Spencer, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, guys. You're gonna have to set me up a little bit. I don't remember where we were on all this momentum.
Well, what I figure I kind of want to do is maybe just kind of give us ourselves a brief overview of the way this Western idea of money and commerce has been set up, and how maritime law ends up governing everything. So, if you could take it off from there. I mean, we've got a new audience here on the Truth Frequency, and I'm not too sure how many are familiar with what you've put out there so far. But maybe start with how maritime law ends up being the law of the land, so to say.
Well, there's probably, I would say, a good amount of the listeners would probably know more about maritime than I do. I would say it's more along the lines of contract law and merchant law that got the consideration for the dominion of money, I guess. But God, maritime. I don't know, Tom.
Well, so let's go to our main monetary system and the way it's structured. I mean, I think we covered a lot of this in the first segment that we did with you on how our system of commerce was actually set up originally, and the whole how the trading systems were set up, and then out of that sprouted the banking systems and that sort of thing. So, well,
in the first section, I remember I really wanted to go. We did 3 separate shows. In the first section, I really wanted to go over contracts because money is used to execute a contract. And so that's why I kind of wanted to scratch the surface there a little bit and just talk about some things that aren't obvious and point minds in that direction. Is you have to understand money. You can't go straight to it. You have to have a fundamental understanding of contracts, fundamental or better understanding of contracts, just to get onto the trail of understanding money. And so I remember starting there and really wanting to emphasize the table of equity, which isn't necessarily maritime or admiralty. Equity is a table of law, which that's almost an oxymoron, but just conversationally, it's the table of jurisprudence where you need to have a little bit more of an understanding of money, because the only way to execute a contract is for the concept of property to go both directions. Property has to go 2 ways. Well, otherwise, the contract doesn't get executed, and funny things happen to it, like novations, and that's back into contract a little bit. So that was on the start of the first show.
So you brought up something that might be good to define here, and will probably enlighten a few people. What is property? What is the definition of property?
Yeah, a lot of times people think property is, most of the time they think of land, like real estate, or even items, things you can touch, tangible things like televisions or watches or cars. But property is a right to a thing. or it's a bundle of rights to a thing. And so you can have a property right in ideas and things like that. And so the things that I just mentioned, like land or a watch or a television, those are technically speaking the subjects of property. And so property is, when I looked up and did research on property, you don't find very good, very enlightening sources in the mainstream stuff. You almost have to get over into legal dictionaries, and once you crack one of those open, that's where all the secrets to this stuff is you'll see definitions in a law dictionary or a law encyclopedia that a mainstream dictionary won't even allude to. And so property is a right to a thing to the exclusion of everybody else.
Which also would include your labor, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the most uncontroversial, fundamental types of property or subjects of property is labor. Yeah, that's something that ultimately you'd want to have a really firm grasp on. And one of the ways to look to see if property can be abstract and not that doesn't have to be tangible. Just as an example to make it obvious is intellectual property, like ideas or patents or trademarks or that kind of thing. Because when a song gets copyrighted, that's intellectual property, and it's not just on the recording medium, whether it's a CD or old vinyl or something. It has nothing to do with what it's on. It's the intellectual property, and it doesn't have to be tangible at all. Trademarks, that kind of thing. Yeah, it's
right.
pretty important to know that.
So I also want to go into the so for example, you have a 20-year-old kid who's just started working, and he's making a pretty decent living compared to the 40-year-old guy who's, let's say, making $60,000. This would be going into credit score. Can you explain to us why is it that one is worth more than the other?
Well, purely considering that with the credit score and credit, if that's what you mean, one has put more property out into the system, and that's what one of the things that we got to, I think, on the second or third show is that the credit score is a measuring tool to see how much property an individual has put out into the system in terms of labor. And so, yeah, an 18-year-old hasn't had any kind of time to be able to accumulate a measurable amount of labor that he's put out into the system. Man, that's jumping way ahead. That's jumping way ahead for money. But somebody that's 40 or 60 that's making well into six figures, on the other end of the spectrum, maybe they're a professional like a dentist or something. They put out way more labor than probably what they tap into with their own credit, and they probably have a surplus of labor compared to the average.
And so that in itself drives up the credit score, right?
Yeah, that's what. Yeah. Now the credit score originally, just like a Model T car, like a Model T Ford, the credit score was originally designed to measure how much labor was put out into the system, how much property was put out into the system, and just like the Model T, just like a car, got way more sophisticated and a lot more things added on. When cars first came out, headlights were options. Mirrors. Maybe it was mirrors that I'm thinking of. One of the two, maybe both. Anyway, there was stuff that people just take for granted now. Well, the same thing's going on with the credit score. Yeah, there's all kinds of built-in ratios and secondary and tertiary considerations that are built into the credit score that didn't used to be there. But the core element is to measure labor.
Right. So Whoa, am I still there, right?
Yeah, you're still here.
Oh, okay. Okay, I just had something freaky happen. So, anyways, so let's move on from that. We want to understand a little bit more about, there's a, where am I going, Tom?
Let me just let people know that we'll be taking phone calls after this segment. So for those of you who are calling, I guess in 15 minutes after the break, we'll start taking phone calls.
Okay.
You want me to keep going on the momentum of where I was, why it was that I built up property in the other show?
Sure.
Okay. To understand money now, you have to have a comparable model. And the previous model was one built on gold. And so gold, at that time, people either had gold coin and they used it for actual medium of exchanges, or they deposited it with a bank, and the bank gave them claim tickets for it. Just like when you go to the dry cleaner and you drop off clothes or shirts or blankets or something to be dry cleaned, they give you claim tickets so that you can claim the property later. And so in the dry cleaner scenario, it's one kind of property. In the bank, it's another. It's the same principle. When you dropped off gold at a mom and pop bank, they gave you little claim tickets. And that's why every single bank had a different kind of banknote. And so now the sales pitch for the Federal Reserve System was the continuity nationwide for one kind of currency across the nation. But that's why there was different kinds of currency across the nation previously. And so now that's the foundation for the original model of money, and it's substantially different now. And so I would say to most of the general public, they're not even curious about gold and that we used to use it and we don't now, but it's huge if you want to understand it. And so it used to either be the medium of exchange, or you dropped it off, you deposited in a bank. They gave you banknotes, which were merely claim tickets. And so some of that terminology back then was either it was credit money or it was actual money, and there was a distinction. And so in 1933, when gold got pulled out of circulation, there still had to be property that backed currency. There has to be. Otherwise, contracts never get executed. And if you haven't studied contracts, and if you haven't studied it through the table of equity, this is going way too fast to understand it conversationally. In other words, to keep up with the flow that I'm laying it out now. But when gold got pulled out in 1933, it was replaced with labor. The property was behind the system, and so yeah, we still use those the credit money, which is just receipts. It's the title to the money that's behind the system.
So what was put in place to monitor the labor at that point?
Well, okay, real quick. So it doesn't matter if it's digital or cash notes. Those are still the claim tickets for it. So now, what's your question? What
was put in place at that time to monitor or to track the labor?
To administrate it, maybe.
Right.
So what really started happening fast and furious back in the 1930s was birth certificates were issued, and so birth certificates are it functions like a bond now, and birth certificates are housed in Treasury, United States Treasury, at least for the United States. Where and how that works internationally, Germany and Europe and that kind of thing, I don't know with precision, but I do know that the system works the same way in every country that is that's a member of the United Nations. That's one of the qualifying features of a United Nations country. Is it has to be bankrupt.
Huh.
Yeah. And so
makes sense.
Yeah, the international system has a tough time with solvent countries like Iraq and North Korea. So that sometimes they'll get them to play ball one way or another. And so, along with issuing of a birth certificate, there's ties into this also is a social security number, and that is what the administrative arm uses to administer an individual, and the IRS in the United States is who does the administration and keeps track of that property. And then what the system then, not the IRS, but the commercial system measures the property is with the credit score.
Okay, so we have all our labor is being monitored by the Treasury through our birth certificates, and the Social Security number is through another division, is it not?
Yeah. The Treasury doesn't monitor at all anything. They just have that. They just have the birth certificates.
So it's like they have a bond in their safe.
Yeah, you got it. And so the folks that actually monitor it are whoever tracks your credit score, TransUnion, Equifax, those guys. Those are the guys that are measuring you to keep tabs on how much labor you're putting out, what's your credit score. And so yeah, they also monitor if you have any debts and that kind of thing, if you owe money. But they're also monitoring the rest of your productivity.
Right.
That's why there's only 3 of them. I mean, it would be absolutely inconceivable for somebody, just a guy off the street, to open up a credit monitoring service. I mean, there's no way. They're not in the good old boy club. That's why there's only, I think, 3 of them, maybe 4. I don't remember.
There's another one that's not a big player, but the 3 main ones.
Yeah,
Equifax, TransUnion, and
Experian.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah. So that's also why. Well, let me throw this out real quick, Ramon. That's why when the privatization of the prison system and jails is through the roof, because the more people that can get herded into either jail or prison, they don't then tap into their own labor, and the court systems can write bonds and sell them on either the open market or trade them or whatever, and courts make money based on the labor that they have behind their doors.
Whether that labor is being used or not?
Right. But I'm sure that that's part of the, I saw a news story today that some famous, semi-famous rock star was in jail, and they were doing some sewing project for $38 a day or something. And I thought, yeah, the point is to keep people in prison and to keep them either laboring or for them not to have access to their own labor. And then that means the system does have access to it, and they can write bonds. Now we get real deep into fictional leaps of logic, but that's how they do it. And so a court will write bonds on a particular prisoner and monetize it.
So a prisoner like that who's semi-famous, they can write huge bonds on him, right?
Well, I don't know the exact administration and what the justification is on, but it probably would tie into credit score, because that can be done through the Social Security number.
Yeah. I just want to let everybody know that we're bouncing around, so you can always go back to www.thehundredthmonkeyradio.com, and on the top bar it says overview of money with Specner Barclay, and you can just listen to it in detail, each one.
Sure the nature and character of money?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We went in, we did 3 segments there and went quite deeply into a lot of the terminologies and the history and stuff. So it's a good background. After you listen to this, you may want to pop over there and check those out to fill in the blanks.
Yeah, we are pretty chaotic here.
Yeah, we're just bouncing around to kind of give people questions to ask us. But one thing I wanted to ask you was, as far as there was an analogy you made before, and that's with how the bank. What's the bank role in all of this?
Oh, yeah. Let's see. So bankrolls are typically, especially at the loan cycle, especially through mortgages. When someone goes and fills out a promissory note at the loan process of getting a mortgage, the bank passes that promissory note directly to Treasury, and Treasury monetizes that promissory note. The currency did not come from the bank's assets or credit, or the depositor's money. The bank was just a pass-through. That promissory note went in the front door and out the back door. And as a result of that, currency was created from Treasury, and it gets wire transferred in the form of Fed wire over to whatever that particular bank was. It was a spring, like a spring of water. That was the source of it right there. It didn't come from currency that was already in circulation. But it's almost impossible to get a bank to admit it. I've only heard of it happening one time, where somebody was getting cross-examined in a court case, and rumor had it the banker literally cried because he got pushed and pushed and pushed by an attorney that knew how to cross-examine, and it was a pretty lengthy battle to get the truth pulled out of him. I have the transcript too. If anybody ever asks, I can dig that up. They can find it through, if they contact Hundredth Monkey, I can get it to you.
Yeah.
But where the bank comes in, and so then they then are just the administrator for that currency, and it's not debt because it was made, and all it is a wire, a creation of digital information. And then the bank holds their hand out and says, "Hey, listen, you owe us $300,000 because no one knows how to call them out on the issue of that the bank didn't have any risk."
Right.
Not that no one knows. I'm definitely exaggerating and putting too broad a face on it, because there's lots of guys that have figured that out.
Yeah, and that there's something that we did cover in one of those segments, that whole risk thing, as far as it's not a legal claim if there was no risk. I can't remember exactly how you explain that, but
well, one of the ways that people have been profoundly dumbed down is that by and large the public is not exposed to maxims of law, which are just fundamental principles. And one of them is risk is the measure of credibility. So however much risk you have in a situation is how much credibility you have in the situation. In other words, they're correlative. The extent of one is the scope of the other. So if the bank didn't have any risk, if they can't show risk, they don't have any standing, is another way of saying credibility.
So, so if somebody were to go in and this is probably going way out there a bit. If somebody were going in and contest, say, a bank loan,
yeah.
Bank would have to come, and you use that as your foundation for your case. You're not at risk here. Show me your risk.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm really putting this out there very crudely. But that would actually be a case that could possibly be won, because the bank would have to show that they are at risk of losing something, right?
Yeah, there was a case like that.
Then it would go into the money has no value and there's no risk with something that has no value, or doesn't even exist.
I say that it does exist and it does have value. It's just that the bank didn't lose any property in the transaction.
Yeah, I knew there was an angle there, but
what was the case that there was? I always forget the name of that case. But a guy took him to case in the 1970s for the...
How about the 60s? Jerome Daly
60s.
case?
Yes.
Yeah, and the judge was Mahoney. Yeah, that was up in Minnesota somewhere. I don't remember the bank, but the guy, the defendant was Jerome Daly. So, if you guys want to look that up on Google and fill in the blanks there. Yeah, something credit union, or it was some kind of credit union.
Okay.
It's okay.
Well, we're about to slip off into our top of the hour break here, and when we come back, we'll open up the lines and let you guys pick some of Spencer's brain. He's got just a fountain of information here, guys. So anything that has to do with money and anything like that, give it a shot.
1, 2, 3, 4. Exactly.
Without a warning.
On your way through this hard venture, you will be tested.
This is the Truth Frequency Radio Network.
Have you washed your potato? Could you be the one? Can humanity develop unity consciousness for all? Reaching out with body, mind, and spirit, Tom and Ramon invite you to join them on the 100th Monkey Radio on the Truth Frequency Radio Network to explore our changing times and piece together the evolution of our body, mind, and spirit. Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific.
Kings and queens and royal gents and popes and priests and presidents, gurus and shamanic healers, pharmacological dealers.
Oh, welcome back, guys. We're here with Specner Barclay, and we got just a short segment here, but
Let's give out those numbers, Tom.
Yeah, we got a couple of phone numbers here for you. We got 213-233-3998 and a toll-free number of 888-832-2027. Actually,
by the way, the music you were listening to was by Perry Mills.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention that.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to connect into the board for the phones. It's not connecting me in. Anyway,
there's no phone calls right now, so I'll take care of that.
So, Spencer, in this short segment here, how about I'd like to get your opinion about 2012 real quick.
I kind of have most of anything that I've ever looked into has been on, the hearsay kind of thing. I've never really seen, I don't know who said what about any of that, I guess, wisdom that's come down through the Mayans and any of those guys. The one thing that I did do is I looked up, I looked up the word world in Webster's dictionary because I knew they weren't saying end of the earth, and they weren't saying the end of the planet. And so, one of the definitions of world is the Roman Empire. And Roman civil law is just Roman Empire. And I thought, wow, that's kind of funny because civil law only exists because people are ignorant to it. They don't know where the hidden contracts are. Civil law is purely parasitic. It's a system that sits over the top of the republic, which is the sales pitch for government. Home of the free, land of the brave, while we charge and bill you. Wow. And so the first part of that motto, home of the free and land, that's a republic. And so civil law is all hidden contracts, invisible contracts. There was a show right before us, and they were talking about people in jail where there was no injured party. And that's because there's hidden contracts that oblige those people to not do those mala prohibita restrictions. Mala prohibita means it's evil because we prohibited it. And I thought, man, this end of the world thing, 2012, it's coincidentally coinciding with the civil law, people finding out, all the secrets in the system.
Right.
And that's the definition to world was the Roman Empire.
Wow.
And I thought that's a strange coincidence.
That's a whole different definition. Wow.
Yeah, I got it right here. I'll drop it in for you. Webster's Dictionary, 1828.
So we're gonna go on a break soon, and when we get back, make sure you give us a call. And there's a few other questions I want to ask. You're listening to the 100th Monkey with Tom and Ramon.
I don't care about what you heard while the rumors are flying. Don't believe a word. Not one thing to tell you I've got to say. Give it a chance, I don't push it away. It's a bad reputation. Now I don't care about what you heard while the rumors are flying. Don't believe a word.
You ever wonder why you know who's on the phone before they call? Are you able to sense, see things? You ever wonder what is consciousness? Join me and Tom every week on the 100th Monkey Radio Show so we can explore these different subjects on the True Frequency Radio Network.
Welcome back to the 100th Monkey Radio Show with Tom and Ramon. I see some people are calling in, and yes, we are monitoring the chat room.
We seem to be having a problem with connecting into the phone system here, Ramon. It says it's offline. The KTFRN phones link is offline, Ramon. I just tried calling it, and I get a machine.
Oh, okay. Well,
so
people called before it was connecting, so I don't know that part. Oh, there we go. Okay, we have a phone call. Let me pick that up. Hello, welcome to the 100th Monkey Radio Show. Can you hear us? Hello.
Maybe.
Are you guys doing that through Skype or phone lines?
Phone line.
It's phone lines through the truth frequency here. I don't know. I think something's trying to reset there. Anyways, Ramon, you said you had a couple more questions for Spencer. Might as well keep chatting here while I try to work on this in the background.
Okay. Well, I know this is a touchy subject for a lot of people, but I think it goes into money, and I wanted to go into the definition of a slave and what is a slave.
Oh, yeah. Wow. To understand slavery is, or you also have to understand peonage, which is peonage is specifically working off a debt, and so slavery has, I should probably pull up the exact definition, but it's when you're completely under the authority and control of someone else, a person who is wholly subject to the will of another. And so, that is pretty touchy subject. I don't know how to tie that in with peonage and this in a real broad, approachable venue like this. That might need to be set off aside because it's got too much historical connotations to it too that we would need to unpeel the onion very slowly and carefully.
Yeah, I brought it up because of, for example, with the pirates and the earring.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, so I see what you're setting me up for that. So in common law courts way back when if someone didn't have enough money to pay their debts, they had to go work for somebody, and that was called bond servitude. And so that debtor would be the surety for a bond, and they would have to work it off. And one of the ways that bond servant would be marked would be by putting an earring in his ear, and that's part of what gave rise to that. When pirates had earrings in their ears, it's just sort of kind of common knowledge or folklore. That's part of what was going on is when these guys were bound to work off their debt and they didn't want to do it, you could just go get a job on a ship and get out of town, and that's where a lot of guys running from the law would just go make a living, and that's kind of how that developed. I don't know what to call that, but just that stereotype. That's how that was developed. Is most of those guys were running from the law, and it was if they were found and they didn't have that earring in their ear, it was even a bigger offense. So they just leave it there.
Yeah, a little history class in there for you. But
yeah.
Going. Let's give a quick overview. What So, for example, when the United States of America needs money, I forgot how many billions of dollars now they're printing up. Let me see if I could pick up this phone call.
I think that's the system, Ramon.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. So I think our phone lines are open. So actually, I'm gonna test it out. Go ahead and finish up what you were saying there.
Yeah. So when, like, for example, now we're making, I forgot how many billions of dollars per day or per month. I can't remember the exact numbers, but how does that whole system work? So the government needs money, and then they turn to
real
the Fed.
big picture.
Yeah.
There's two systems of currency introduction. One is the United States borrows money into existence by trading bonds for it. And the bonds have to be paid back, and those are paid back through the IRS. I think it was the Reagan administration that did some research to find out how much of the money collected by the IRS went to the United States Treasury or any sort of infrastructure for the United States or local government, and they found that it was zero. And I don't remember the name of that commission, but there was some commission that he did, and I can dig that up for you too if you got anybody that wants to really see that. And so what they found, or probably what they did, was make public the fact that the IRS collects money and sends it straight to the interest debt for the loans that the United States gets. And so that's the tight little circle of borrow and pay for currency introduction. And so that's one way to do it, is the United States issues a bond and it gets paid back through income tax, through U.S. citizens.
Interesting.
Yeah, and the other way, it's a completely separate introduction of currency when someone either borrows money, put that in quotations, or issues some sort of promissory note or promise to pay. If you look up the definition of currency, currency is an item that functions as circulation, and an item is a promise or order to pay money. It's anytime you get a bill, that's actually currency. And if you send it directly to Treasury and bypass the bank, they'll wire transfer money to the creditor. That's a second system.
Is that A for B thing? That
some people use that terminology.
Yeah.
It's called set off.
Yeah. Called set off?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay, guys, I just tested the phone lines. The toll-free number seems to be getting a machine, but the 213-233-3998 is going through.
Yeah, I saw when you called that came in. Yeah, sorry, I had to run to the door really quickly. For some reason, whenever I'm doing a show, that's when the mailman shows up.
And what sort of statute or law should be quoted when declaring non-joinder with the straw man? This is a question out of the chat.
Oh, so what can you cite?
What sort of statute or law should be quoted? Right. What can you cite when declaring non-joinder with a straw man?
It's just your free will. I object. I don't want to do that. I don't know that you need to cite a statute for it. I don't know that you need to. But you know what? I only know of a local one for Washington State, and I might have the number wrong. I should probably verify it, but there's one that's really, it's almost unbelievable that they put this in writing. But it's an RCW, Revised Code of Washington, 4256030, and it says the people of this state do not yield their sovereignty to the agencies that serve them. And I thought that was pretty bold statement to put in writing. Usually that kind of thing you have to read between the lines.
That's pretty plain spoken right there.
Yeah. Here, I'll drop the link into here if you guys want to put that on your website, and
I'll put that into the chat room right now.
And here's the first sentence of that statute. But I would just say it's you object. You don't want to do that. I don't want to be surety for a fiction, and I object to surety for a fiction, and I object to joinder. Read that sentence right there.
The people of the state do not yield their sovereignty to the agencies that serve them. That's nice.
Yeah, and that's a period at the end of that. That's not just clipped and paste that out of context.
And their punctuation and all that stuff is very important as far when they're writing these laws too, isn't it?
It sure is. I have an entire file where I have separate books just on style, grammar, and punctuation. Like, what does a dash mean? What does a full stop mean? What does a semicolon mean? Yeah, what does all capital letters mean? What does a capital letter mean? All of those things are sort of hidden code that have meaning along with the words themselves.
Wow. Got another.
You got it?
Yeah. How do credit reporting agencies get info on our productivity?
I'm sure it's reported both through the IRS, through when companies use Federal Reserve notes to pay an employee. That then has to be reported. The employer has to report who they gave money to and how much. And so that's one way that that information is fed back into the system.
So that whole process is all pretty much above the board. How they track your money and everything. It's all basically through your banking and your pay slips and the tax system, etc.
Yeah, that's a pretty airtight system. It's very difficult to. And I would say that labor and stuff, that when people work under the table, the system doesn't want to hear about it. There's probably not a way for people, when you're selling, used car parts on Craigslist, they're not, some website that, but the system is sort of starting to focus on those kinds of income, like PayPal. If you have over a certain amount of currency transactions on PayPal or eBay, those kinds of places, they're starting to pay attention.
Right.
To that.
Here's another question. I'm not sure if I understand this one. What if we are self-employed and we don't file tax returns? How do they track our productivity then?
Man, I don't know.
Yeah.
And it may look like something akin to zero or nothing, and that would also be reflected in. Now, if that person that's self-employed and they don't have they're not casting an obvious shadow into the system, they'll probably also have an extraordinarily difficult time tapping into their credit. And there again, that's because the system doesn't really recognize that income. It kind of discourages, people that would, let's say they're self-employed and they get paid a lot under the table and they either don't want to report it or they just make deposits. I don't know.
Yeah, so what about deposits into a bank? Doesn't the bank have to report something over a certain amount?
Yeah, I don't know that kind of stuff. Now we're getting kind of into a level of detail that I haven't researched and tracked in order to find out what the implications there on the credit score.
Right.
Well, here's one that when you told me really shocked me. What's the difference? What's a person?
Oh, a person is a character. It's a Latin hybrid of two words, per and son, sonus. Per means by or through or by way of. And sonans means sound. And so it's used to mean in Latin in the time when the word was used a lot more literally, it would be the characters in a play, or sometimes it meant a mask. But person is it's a character, as opposed to people, or it's fiction. It's not something that actually exists in reality. That's why almost all statutes, are written in because they're written in fiction. So the subjects of them have to be also. So that's why I always says no persons. You see persons in plural, and you never see people. Almost never. That, you know what? That's why gun control is always referred to as, those statutes will always say no persons shall, or, gun control regulates persons. And when people try to make the connection to the Constitution, and it says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, that's true. But it's up to someone to declare themselves whether they're a person or a people. You know who does a great talk on that? Absolutely stellar. Is a guy named Bill Thornton, and he's got a website called 1215.org, 1215.org, and he goes into detail in some audio links there as to what the difference is between people and person. I think that might even be on YouTube, people or person, which one are you? If anybody's interested, he does a better job than I do.
I'm not sure if you can answer this one, but why are cases so carefully recorded by voice?
Well, I don't know. Probably because what are the people called? The court reporters? What are they called that used to run that machine and try to keep up? I mean, it's
stenographer.
Yeah, can you imagine trying to keep up with someone that's talking back and forth over, your adversary and trying to argue and all that kind of stuff, and a stenographer trying to keep up with all that? I don't know.
That's all written in shorthand, I think, isn't it?
It is, but what if you and I are in an argument? How does a stenographer keep up with who was saying what back and forth over the top, and I'm trying to cut you off, and now who's saying what? I mean, that would be brutal to try to write all that, keep up with that. I don't care how good you are.
So, well, you may not know this. Can the recording be actually referred back to and used by the court? Yeah, I suppose it could, yeah.
Yeah, I know a couple people recently that have went back to get their transcripts, and they got it on a CD. It was just an audio recording.
So, let's say I go to court for a speeding ticket.
Yeah.
There was something you said on another show before, and I'm trying to remember how you worded, but it's basically if I start arguing the speeding ticket, if I say I wasn't speeding and I wasn't doing this, there was something you were saying that because I'm in his courtroom and I accepted their laws without even knowing it.
Break coming here, Ramon.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I'll save that.
So, yeah, finish that up and we'll
Well, it's a little longer, so just wait, because it's got another few seconds before the song starts. So you're listening to Tom and Ramon with Specner Barclay, what is it, the 100th Monkey Radio Show.
Yeah, who are we?
I don't know. Still figuring that one out.
This is my daughter playing the didgeridoo, by the way.
Oh, nice.
You are listening to the 100th Monkey Radio with Tom and Ramon, raising the consciousness of the planet one monkey at a time.
So, welcome back to the 100th Monkey with Tom and Ramon, and we have our special guest, Specner Barclay. And I was asking him before the break, so if someone, goes to the court system for a speeding ticket, and once they start arguing, then the court, I'm trying to remember how you said it, but you were saying before how they're the one, the court now feels like they have to take care of you because you're under their jurisdiction.
Oh, parents patriae. Yeah, it takes a few steps to get there. First things is the court systems, nisi prius court systems, statute staple courts, inferior courts. Those are all words for the same thing. They have to get your consent in order to get jurisdiction, and so. That's one of the reasons for all rise, that they gave you an offer, and when you stand, you accept it. So all rise, and you do. So they asked for jurisdiction, and then you granted it. There's all kinds of little hidden tricks like that. Remember I was saying something about the civil system heavily relies on deceit and people not knowing really what's going on. That's an example. So let's say you do grant jurisdiction. When you plead either guilty, not guilty, or I don't contend, you plead, you've passed what's called the major premise in law, which is I agree that you guys have jurisdiction, and I agree that this is a controversy, and I just want to narrow the focus down to whether or not I did these facts. And so you completely skipped over the question of law, which is, is this law even apply to me? And so once you plead, you say, yes, it does apply to me. And that's the big trick on mala prohibita regulation, as opposed to, mala in se. Mala prohibita it's just prohibited. You're prohibited from not wearing a seatbelt when you drive. You're prohibited from using a cell phone when you're in the car. We just tell you can't do it. So what?
So what would be the best response to standing your sovereignty in that situation, instead of where they ask you, do you plead guilty or non guilty to these charges?
Well, we got to set that up to the side because I'm still working towards Ramon's question, which was. But I'll get back to that. And I don't know necessarily that the best way I don't know that there is a best way, because I've seen some people in court that need to be controlled and that need to be under the thumb of that judge up there. There was this Jamestown Exposition in around the turn of the 19th century. And Teddy Roosevelt gave a speech, and one of the lines in that speech was, people will either govern themselves or it will be done for them. There's no two ways about it. And I very much agree with that. If people don't know how to come into harmony on their own, somebody's going to do it for you. Anyway, so working our way back towards parents patriae. Once you pled into the system, and so now we got a court case going, and it's just a summary judgment thing. In other words, there's no one's putting in a significant amount of evidence for a jury to review. It's, when it's just you and the judge. If you dishonor him 3 times, if he asks you questions and you dishonor him, he can, and I'll tell you what that means in a second. You become not mentally competent, and anybody that's not mentally competent the state has a duty to take care of them, and so the judge, by the doctrine of parens patriae, he's an agent of the state, and he just will take over, and he's got a duty to do it. And so there's 2 ways to handle something in honor and 2 in dishonor. And so the 2 in honor, 1 is just full acceptance and accord. Whatever they tell you to do, you just do it. But there's 2 in dishonor, and 1 is to be silent. You can't just go silent and not say anything. That's not going to get you out of anything. And then the other major way in dishonor is to fight or argue or make statements and that kind of thing. And that's dishonor. Now we got a controversy. And the last way is back in honor, and it is to conditionally accept. But you can't just get a taste of conditional acceptance and then start doing it once it's too late. Especially once the court's got jurisdiction, you're really upping the skill level of what's going on. But if you dishonor him a bunch, you argue him, he's asking you straight questions and you don't answer just right. 1, 2, 3, going once, going twice, sold. That's I think what you might be getting at, Ramon, is he just takes over.
Well, give us an example of answering him straight. Like,
sure, give me a question.
Where were you at 10:15, for example?
Well, I'd be happy to answer that if you can prove that it's any of your business. Ooh. You see, I just shifted it back over to you. You now have the burden, and there's no controversy because I said I'm happy to answer the question. I didn't say no, I'm not gonna, or just it is none of your business.
Okay.
Some of that is you got to understand what burden of proof is and onus probandi. I don't know. You want to give me another one?
Tom, you got another?
So how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Well, I'd be happy to answer that if the court's proven jurisdiction.
Oh, man, he must love you in court. Let's see.
But here's the problem: is now you got a spotlight on you, and it really ups your skill level. You can't just go in and start doing this stuff. Don't take this as a recommendation. That was just an example of a way to stay in honor. Conversational. Right. Because if you went in there and hadn't practiced this stuff, didn't look through it at all, you just took my word for it, you would get in a lot of trouble. There was somebody interviewed me and put it on the internet, and then there was a comment underneath it. I think it was on YouTube, and I don't remember which one it was, but someone said, if you follow this advice, you'll go straight to jail. And when I read that, I thought, I can't agree more. If that's all you did is follow this advice and you didn't know what and why you were doing it, and you didn't have a fundamental understanding of how to handle a situation well beyond that, that's absolutely true. If you just followed this advice and didn't think for yourself, that couldn't be any truer. And I think it was kind of I doubt it was just straight someone trying to be disinformation, but it was someone who clearly thinks very, very shallowly. But I think what they were trying to say was the information that I was saying was not correct. Yeah. But in fact, what they said was absolutely true. Yeah, if you follow that advice, you will go to jail. If that's all you're working with is what you just heard me say, yeah, it's nothing but danger. So let's throw that out there too.
So Here's a question out of the chat room. How is jurisdiction proved?
Good question. It depends on jurisdiction. There's a 2-tier system for jurisdiction, and one is if it has original jurisdiction. A court has jurisdiction because of who they are. It's not a nisi prius court. It's not an inferior court. They're courts of record. Let's set that aside for a second, and I'll tell you what the other ones are. They are what are called nisi prius courts or statute staple courts. They're the inferior courts. and they're the ones that they don't have inherent jurisdiction. And so there's the two tiers. Will you read the question again to me?
How is jurisdiction proved?
Oh, because you agreed to it. So in inferior courts, it's proved because you agreed to it somehow. And failure to object, it appears that you agree. And so unless you correctly object to jurisdiction at the right point in time, you can't get into a controversy and then object to jurisdiction. You're outside of the sequence. And now they're going to say, hey, wait a minute, if you check the jurisdiction now that we're into it, now they can say, hey, let's get this guy a Feretta hearing. Let's see if this guy's mentally competent. Because that's unsound thinking. And everything you've said might have not indicated that you are of unsound mind, but it's a technicality that they can kind of put a noose over it. Now back to original jurisdiction courts. If let's say you harm someone, you hit them over the head, or something happens where you actually cause an injury, there are courts that have original jurisdiction, and yeah, they can just drag you in there against your will if there's enough evidence to say that you caused that injury. There's no getting around jurisdiction.
Okay.
So you got to understand the two tiers and which one you're getting into.
So, if someone has a court case, do you actually help people with this, and how would they get in contact with you if you do?
No, no, not for this conversation.
No,
what I like to do is to study the nature and character of money, and because of that, it's some of the center of that is when corporations send out a bill. It's actually the currency to pay it with, but when you find out, they will run all kinds of interference and kick sand in your face and do everything but tell you the truth, and a lot of times they can end up in court to settle the matter, and that's why my interest has followed that far. But my main interest is the nature and character of money and getting those accounts resolved where people have real heavy debts.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So you do help people, like if they have mortgage problems or their houses.
In foreclosure.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, my email is saltydriftwood at Gmail.
Okay. Well, that will be linked up on the show, guys. So let's see. We had a couple more questions that popped through the chat there. What do the square brackets mean on court documents?
Oh, that's the four corners rule. There's two words that we need to look up in Webster's dictionary, and one is line and one is border. And so whenever there's four corners or four brackets, four lines around some text on a document, that the intent of the author is that it doesn't appear on the page.
Oh, really? So
yeah.
if it's square brackets, then they can disregard that?
Yeah, yep. It's
Interesting.
one of the little dirty tricks to the legal system is when you see something in brackets, four corners, you start with the word line, you look up the word line, and between the word line and bound and border, you'll see that it's a boundary, or it's let me look up the exact word here. Maybe we should probably just leave it up to other people, but those two words will get you to it. And you'll see that whatever is inside of that is the limit of how far that concept should go. Let's see. Let me look up border. B-O-R. Sometimes I spell border wrong and I put an A in it.
Yeah.
That's the wrong one. Hold on just a second here. Let's get right to it.
Okay.
Tom, play some elevator music.
It's the extreme limit of or confinement. So that's what's going on. Is so if something's inside of four borders, or because a line is a border, And so if there's 4 of them all the way around those words, that's the extreme limit. And so that's as far as that concept can go, is those lines. That concept can't bleed out into the rest of the text.
Ah, got it.
Yeah, to confine upon.
So
to confine within the bounds, to limit, is the definition of border. And line gets you to border.
Right.
And there's another dirty trick. Let me throw this out there, too, if there's a lot of people that kind of look into this kind of thing. Sometimes people will turn in paperwork, and the judge will say, yeah, I see that. I have that document up here, but I don't see what you're talking about. They'll turn the thing over, and they'll be looking at the back side of it. And they will literally have the document and literally not see what you're talking about. And so one of the things some people do is they'll put an X, a little X, in the top left-hand corner of the back of the page, and an arrow all the way down to the bottom right corner, and then write the word "see obverse," so that you can't. There's no plausible deniability to look at the back page and still be confused.
Wow.
Isn't that a dirty trick?
Wow. So, I find the people that actually work in these court systems, how much of this stuff do they actually understand as far as gaining jurisdiction over somebody in the court, and et cetera, et cetera?
I think that it's so compartmentalized that they're just told what to do. At each level of the game, there's a careful screening to get people into court, and there's someone that comes out and gets everybody's name. So if you want to wait and just talk to the judge, there's someone there to run interference and keep you from doing that. So as people start to learn this kind of stuff, the courts then learn how to, from a managerial point of view, defeat people from being able to do that kind of thing. But at the individual employee level, I doubt that there's any real knowledge. And I want to tell you a story that happened today. One of the ways that mortgage foreclosures happen is because people don't acknowledge their deeds, like a warranty deed that they get. Until they acknowledge it, it's an offer that has not been accepted. And so when the deed is filed into the county, it's an empty offer that hasn't been accepted yet. And so if you go file an acknowledgement into the county, it completes the title. And so there was a guy that went into Lane County Courthouse down in Oregon today, and he went to file an acknowledgement into the county recorder. And you're asking about how much do these people in these positions know? This gal that was working at the county recorder's office would not file it. And at first, she was running interference, and she said, well, I don't know if I can file this. Do you know if there's a statute that authorizes me to do that? And boom, the guy had the statute. So if anybody out there is in Oregon, it's 93.635. He comes right up with it. Yeah, it's ORS, Oregon Revised Statutes 93.635. Didn't come right back with it. Had to pause. He might have had to call somebody and ask him, and then he told him that. And so he goes right back to the county recorder, and she just comes up with other reasons why. Now she has a completely different reason why he can't file it. And she says, well, I can't accept this because it doesn't have this certain kind of language. So he pops out of the line. He puts the right language in this thing. Now keep in mind, this acknowledgement is done perfectly to the requirements, the statutory requirements. And he gets back in line, and she won't take it just because. And so he said, is there a statutory reason that you're relying on that prevents you from filing this? And she says, I just can't file that. I can't file that. Now here's a statutory provision that says that deed acknowledgments, here's how you file them. That they should be filed by the county. I'm not talking about what are okay for notaries to notarize. That it's what the county recorder should record. She wouldn't do it. She says, I gotta talk to my boss. I gotta talk to legal. There's no way this thing's getting in. And so he said, what is it that you're relying on? She said, I just can't file those. I just can't file them. And she started to back away from the counter, like she got so flustered, like I don't have a reasonable explanation to tell this guy, but I can't do it. And so you can't be foreclosed on it's not a silver bullet or it's not kryptonite, but it's huge to be able to acknowledge your deed. It keeps the banks away. It's superior title. And that's one of the things I want to get to when we don't do one of these recaps and I can kind of prepare for it, is I want to do titles next time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But here's an example. You say, how much do these guys know? I don't think she knows anything. I think someone says, don't accept deeds. And you talk about the banks working hand in hand with the county. I don't know what's going on, but how it's beyond suspicion. And here's something else. That was laughable because the script that county recorder rolled out, I can guarantee you I know what the first thing that they're going to say is. The county recorder says, you don't need to file that. And they run interference on that's not what you need to do. I've heard that in New Jersey from county recorders in Jersey, California, Oregon, and Washington. They all have the same script. You don't need to file those. And then when you start pushing and the county recorder starts to run out of steam, I know of one county recorder down in Santa Cruz County where the guy went back a second time, and they said, if you come back again with that, we're going to press charges for harassment. Something. They were going to press legal charges on him if he came back again. Like, they just didn't want to see it that bad.
Wow.
Yep.
Well, whether or not it's you're fully in your rights to be able to file it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's and the thing is, it all comes down to what are you going to do about it. Public servants can do anything they want as long as it's within the good old boy network. What are you going to do about it? And the answer is, if they exceed their jurisdiction, they put their public hazard bond in jeopardy. But most people don't know how to do that. Let's go find out what this public official, what is their scope of office and what is their jurisdiction, and then how do we define when they exceeded it? And then let's, hey, do you have a public hazard bond? Who holds it? What's the value? That's the kind of thing where you talk about this is just how public servants work. And then you go ask anybody that's has an education, right? So let's say how many people with a master's degree know that? How many people are just taught these fundamental elements of what's going on? Nobody.
Right.
And then if you ask people that are in the know, they'd probably deny it. Like, oh, shit, some of the sheep are starting to sneak out under the fence.
So go ahead.
And I was just saying, I'm just curious, like, from that point, like, for example, in Santa Cruz, what would you do at that point, when they tell you, next time you come, we're going to press charges?
Well, that particular case right there got sidetracked for other issues within the mortgage. And the bank kind of bum rushed the situation and went ahead and not only foreclosed, but did an unlawful detainer on the people there faster than that remedy could get applied. And so now that just needs to get filed into the county one way or another. It needs to get filed into the public one way or another. One way to do it is just to file it under public notice and then turn in a notice to the county itself and say, hey, this thing's been misfiled. It's in this section here. It needs to be in that section there. I mean, there's different ways to try to start fixing that stuff. I don't know if that would work for sure, but, it might be something to try.
Well, that kind of reminds me of something. Let me check the time, how we're doing time. But how you were saying that if you put something in public notice, so for example, 500 years ago, we would go and nail something to like the church.
Yeah, the most public building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So would that fall under the same thing?
Yeah, and that's what that's the intent of the county recorder, is to make it as public as possible. And so the reason is and I could show you some notary books where acknowledgments are explicit and in detail, but the purchaser of a title is what's called innocent if the previous purchaser never acknowledged his deed into the county recorder. And so that means that if the bank wants to see what the banks do is they foreclose wholesale. It's just a production machinery to get as many homes into foreclosure. And so there's plausible deniability that that's not good business practice. Why would they do that? Because now people can't buy homes. So who is their accomplice in buying up that inventory? Do you guys know?
No.
Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae.
Oh, really?
They buy foreclosures. And so what they do is they go and scoop up as much property as possible. And so they're kind of like the holding tank. And so if you accept your deed now, those guys can't buy the house.
Oh.
The bank foreclosed, and they have to hold it themselves. They can't resell it.
So if I posted it, let's say on the library wall or something like that, would that? So the county won't accept it. So then I do the next best thing and post it in the most public building. Okay, well, just a minute ago, remember when I was saying, hey, look, you can't just follow my advice. You got to be able to think something all the way through yourself. So now I would ask you, okay, if someone then challenged you and someone bought the house later, and you said, hey, look, I made that public. I posted it on the wall of the library. How well could you handle that conversation? How well could you handle that argument if they rebutted it?
Okay, well, we're going to have to find out how Ramon would handle that argument at some other time. We are about out of time here, guys. I want to thank everybody for listening. Spencer, thanks a lot for joining us here. I sure wish the phone lines would have been working. But we'll have to deal with it later. Without investigation, I love you tonight. Thank you, Carrie.